And welcome to this new video with me, Coach Reese. How are you all doing? Hope you're doing really well. So today we're going to follow up from a previous video where I broke down the two different ways that we can take a look at a manager's philosophy. And we're going to focus today around the coaching philosophy and what it involves and how a manager might implement that. So let's get started. So let's quickly recap the two ways we can break down a philosophy. So the coaching philosophy is the environment and how the manager creates that, and the playing philosophy is how the team play, so the formation and the tactics. I will leave a link in the description to the other video where I just cover those with a little bit more detail. So which part of the philosophy comes first? Well, I'm actually going to share with you a quote that I was told when I was on a coaching course, and it's, "Players don't care how much you know until they know how much you care." And I think this is especially important when we think about elite players, so players in the Premier League, Bundesliga, etc., because we often forget that there is a person behind the football player. As much as we think that they're robots and they just go out and play football, there is still a human being there, and part of a manager's job is to satisfy the needs of that human being and appeal to the needs of those people. So as a manager, you almost have to meet the needs of two different people within the same body. You have to meet the needs of the human being and you have to meet the needs of the football player. So how does a manager create that environment? Well, the manager will have their own vision of how the environment should look and what's involved. And this comes from their own influences, so their own background as a player, as a coach, or even as a manager. And with all these influences, they'll take the bits that they liked and disregard the bits that they didn't, so that they can create their own vision of what the environment should look like when they are the manager. And the next influence on this is the people within it. So as a manager, you have to understand the people that are in your team. So you have to understand what makes that person tick, what makes that person happy, what makes that person sad, what do they like, what do they not like. And this will help a manager really build the best environment for the people within the team, and then as a byproduct of that, the footballer within that team. Now it all sounds really simple when we're thinking about it like this, but how does a manager actually implement that? Well, once a manager's established their values, their ideas of what the environment should look like for the people and the players, it's really quite simple. As a manager, you have to live by those values. And through the good, through the bad, you just have to stand by them, because they are your beliefs of what the football environment should look like. And if you're not following them through as a manager, your players, your staff, they're going to disregard them and they're not going to follow the values that you want them to follow. So we're going to take a look at a couple of examples that will help us with this. Unfortunately for me as an Arsenal fan, they're both Arsenal examples. So the first example is Guendouzi. So under Unai Emery at Arsenal, Guendouzi was starting every game to a point where he's probably almost the first name on the team sheet. And then once Mikel Arteta arrived, Guendouzi did start a lot of games, although you could almost sense there was something happening in the background. And during the Brighton game, Guendouzi was involved in an altercation with a Brighton player, and after that we haven't seen Guendouzi play again, and he's now finding that he's on his second season on loan away from Arsenal. And that's not because he's not a good enough football player to play for Arsenal. That's because he breached the values and environment that Mikel Arteta established. And that's why Guendouzi isn't playing for Arsenal. I think we can all agree that Guendouzi probably is a talented footballer. But if you're going to be successful at a club, you have to buy into the values and the environment that the coach and the team and the club are establishing. And the next example is Aubameyang. So for the North London derby, Aubameyang was dropped, and we found out that this was because Aubameyang was late to the team meeting. And this is quite an interesting one, because as a fan, as somebody looking on at the game, you're going, alright, Arsenal's best player's been dropped. there was a reason for it, so we know he was late. But he's still Arsenal's best player in arguably Arsenal's biggest game of the season. So that's a huge, huge call for Mikel Arteta, and that there is a manager standing by his values. Because if Arsenal went on to lose the game, Mikel Arteta looks really stupid. If Arsenal go into to win the game, it's a great move. But we have to think about it, about the culture and the environment that Mikel Arteta is establishing. So with that, we have no hierarchy within the team. So no one player, whether you're the best player, the worst player, the oldest player, or the youngest player, if you buy into the culture and the values and the rules within that environment, you've got every chance of succeeding. Just because you're the best player or the oldest player, you are not guaranteed to start if you breach those values. And that's how you establish them, and that's how a manager will implement them. You have to live them, and you have to stand by them through the thick and the thin, through the good and the bad. As a manager, you implement these values by living them. So that's a little bit more around a coaching philosophy, what's involved with a manager creating that coaching philosophy and how it can be implemented. I do hope you found the video useful. If you have enjoyed, I've been Coach Reese, and I will see you in the next one.